One of the most critical aspects of any relationship, whether it's romantic, professional, or familial, is direct and truthful communication. Now, this might sound obvious. Of course, honesty is important, but I'm not talking about the shallow kind of honesty where you simply avoid telling outright lies. I'm talking about a deep, courageous honesty, the kind where you say what you actually think, express what you actually feel, and articulate what you actually need. And that is not easy. Most people don't communicate truthfully because, frankly, they're afraid to. They don't want to upset their partner. They don't want to create conflict. They don't want to risk being rejected, misunderstood, or disliked. So instead, they hide parts of themselves. They sugarcoat. They avoid difficult conversations. They tell little white lies to keep the peace. And over time, those unspoken truths pile up, creating distance, resentment, and ironically, more conflict. Because the truth is this: a relationship built on half-truths and avoidance is a relationship doomed to fail. If you want a relationship that is strong, fulfilling, and real, you must be willing to say what you mean and mean what you say. If speaking the truth is so important, why do people struggle with it? There are several reasons. 1, fear of conflict. Many people equate honest communication with confrontation, and confrontation makes them uncomfortable, so they avoid saying what's really on their mind, hoping the issue will just go away. But here's the thing: avoiding a difficult conversation doesn't make the problem disappear. It only buries it deeper. And buried problems don't stay buried forever. They fester, they grow, and eventually they explode into even bigger conflicts. The truth, spoken early and with clarity, prevents unnecessary suffering down the road. 2, fear of rejection. A lot of people avoid speaking directly because they're afraid of how the other person will react. What if they don't like what I have to say? What if they leave me? What if they get angry? This fear leads people to hold back their true thoughts and feelings, creating a relationship where they are only showing a version of themselves that they think their partner wants to see. But here's the problem: if you are not fully yourself, the connection you build is not fully real, and eventually that inauthenticity will crack under the pressure of reality. 3, a desire to keep the peace. Some people avoid direct communication because they don't want to rock the boat. They tell themselves, "It's not worth the fight," or "I'll just let it go." But if something truly bothers you, if it affects your emotions, your trust, or your ability to be happy in the relationship, then not speaking up is actually more damaging in the long run. Keeping the peace in the short term at the cost of your own truth leads to long-term resentment, and resentment kills relationships. How avoiding truthful communication damages relationships. Now that we understand why people avoid direct communication, let's talk about what happens when they do. Because make no mistake, the cost of dishonesty, even small dishonesty, is high. 1, it creates resentment. Imagine this: you keep quiet about something that bothers you because you don't want to cause a fight. Maybe it's a habit your partner has, a decision they made without consulting you, or the way they spoke to you in a moment of frustration, and you tell yourself, "Yeah, it's fine, it's not a big deal." But over time, these little unspoken annoyances pile up. You start feeling frustrated, but your partner doesn't even know why. You begin to pull away emotionally, even if you don't realize it. You start interpreting everything they do through the lens of your suppressed frustration. And one day you snap. What could have been a small, honest conversation early on has now turned into a full-blown emotional explosion. And your partner is left confused, wondering, where did this come from? That's the power of unspoken truth. It doesn't disappear, it just builds pressure until it erupts. 2, it weakens trust. Trust in a relationship isn't just about not lying, it's about knowing that your partner is real with you. If they sense that you're holding back, sugarcoating, or hiding your true feelings, they might start questioning, what else aren't they telling me? Do they actually feel the way they say they do? Can I really trust what they say? Without truth, there is no trust. And without trust, there is no relationship. 3, it stunts emotional growth. A healthy relationship is one where both people help each other grow. But growth requires honesty. If your partner does something hurtful and you never tell them, how can they learn? If you have needs that aren't being met and you never express them, how can they adapt? If you are struggling emotionally and you pretend everything is fine, how can they support you? When you are brutally honest, you give your relationship the chance to evolve. You and your partner become stronger, wiser, and more connected. Now that we understand the dangers of avoiding honest conversations, let's talk about how to actually communicate in a way that is both direct and constructive. Because here's the thing, honesty without wisdom can be destructive. If you're blunt to the point of being harsh, or if you communicate in a way that feels like an attack, your message might be truthful, but it won't be effective. So how do we balance truth with emotional intelligence? 1. Speak with clarity, not emotionally charged accusations. When you finally decide to say what's on your mind, it's easy to let emotions take over. You've been holding in frustration and now it all comes pouring out. But if you communicate from a place of anger or blame, your partner will likely get defensive instead of receptive. For example, let's say you feel like your partner isn't giving you enough attention. Instead of saying, "You never care about me, you're always on your phone, I feel invisible." Try, "I've been feeling disconnected lately and I'd love to spend more quality time together." See the difference? One is attacking, the other is expressing a need. The first invites defensiveness, the second invites conversation. 2. Be specific about what you need. Vague communication leads to vague results. If you want something to change, be specific instead of, "You don't support me." Try, "It would mean a lot to me if you asked about my goals and encouraged me more." The clearer you are, the easier it is for your partner to understand and the more likely they are to meet your needs. 3. Listen as much as you speak. Direct communication is a two-way street. If you want your partner to truly hear you, you need to hear them too. Many people go into difficult conversations ready to defend themselves instead of ready to understand. But real communication happens when both people feel safe to express their truth. Try this simple habit. When your partner speaks, repeat back what they said before responding. For example, "So what I'm hearing is that you feel like I don't prioritize our time together. Is that right?" This small practice forces you to actually process what they're saying, instead of just waiting for your turn to talk. 4. Use I statements, not you statements. One of the most important skills in truthful communication is how you frame your words. The difference between saying "I feel" versus "you make me feel" is significant. When you say, "You never listen to me," it puts the focus on your partner and can make them feel like they're being attacked. Instead, try, "I feel unheard when we're talking, and it makes me feel frustrated." This subtle shift in language helps take the blame out of the equation, focusing on how you feel instead of accusing your partner of wrongdoing. This leads to a more productive conversation because it invites your partner to understand your perspective rather than placing them on the defensive. 5. Be honest, but don't overshare. While honesty is vital, it's also important to remember that not everything needs to be said at every moment. Sometimes, how you say it is just as important as what you say. There are moments where brutal honesty can be damaging if the timing isn't right. Think of it as a tool. You wouldn't use a sledgehammer to assemble furniture, right? For example, in moments of heightened emotion, like an argument or a stressful situation, it may not be the best time to bring up everything that's bothering you. Focus on the issue at hand and let other concerns be addressed when emotions are calmer. 6. Embrace vulnerability. Direct communication doesn't just mean saying difficult things, it also means sharing your true feelings, even if it feels uncomfortable. Being vulnerable requires a great deal of courage because it means you are exposing your inner self, the part of you that may feel scared, hurt, or insecure. But it's this vulnerability that builds deeper connections in relationships. When you're open about your fears or uncertainties, you invite your partner to do the same, creating a safe space for mutual growth. Instead of hiding your vulnerability, consider saying things like, "I'm afraid that we're drifting apart and I'm scared of losing you." Rather than shutting down or avoiding the truth, you're giving your partner an opportunity to respond with care, understanding, and support. 7. Practice regular check-ins. Sometimes we wait too long to have important conversations, building up frustrations and miscommunications over weeks or even months. Instead of letting things pile up, make a habit of regularly checking in with your partner about how things are going. These check-ins don't have to be long or overly formal. They can be casual, like, "How have you been feeling lately? Is there anything you want to talk about? I've been thinking about how we've been communicating. Is there anything I could do better?" By making communication a regular part of your relationship, you prevent the emotional logjam that can form when problems are left unspoken. Why truthful communication is a game changer. Now that you know how to practice it, let's talk about why truthful communication is a game changer for any relationship. 1. It builds deeper trust. When you communicate truthfully, you create an environment where both you and your partner feel safe, emotionally and psychologically. Trust is built over time through consistent honesty. And trust, as I've said before, is the foundation of every strong relationship. Without it, everything falls apart. 2. It reduces resentment. The longer you avoid speaking your truth, the more resentment grows. But when you express your needs, fears, and concerns openly, you stop resentment before it has a chance to build. Regular, direct communication doesn't allow small annoyances to fester. It clears the air and keeps the emotional landscape between you and your partner clean. 3. It leads to growth and change. When you communicate directly, you're giving your partner the opportunity to change. When you say what you need, they can either adjust their behavior or explain why they do what they do. Either way, this opens the door to understanding each other better and growing together. If you keep quiet, you rob your partner of the chance to become better. Honest feedback and open discussions make it possible for both people to learn and evolve. 4. It promotes respect. Honesty shows respect for both yourself and your partner. When you're truthful, you're valuing your own needs and emotions enough to express them, while also showing that you trust your partner to handle your vulnerability. Being honest doesn't just improve communication, it raises the level of respect you have for one another. Final thoughts. The power of truthful communication. Let's recap. Direct and truthful communication is not just about avoiding lies. It's about saying what you really mean, expressing your true feelings, and understanding the other person's perspective. It's hard. It's uncomfortable at times. It requires vulnerability, emotional intelligence, and patience. But it is the bedrock of any meaningful, lasting relationship. When you speak your truth with care, when you actively listen, and when you express your needs directly, you create a foundation of trust, respect, and emotional closeness that only grows stronger with time. So the next time you find yourself holding back because you're afraid of rocking the boat or causing conflict, remember this: not speaking your truth is more damaging than any honest conversation you could have. Speak it, live it, and watch your relationships transform.